Hi, welcome to this short lecture on worksite inspection. This lecture covers the overview of worksite inspection from the perspective of an occupational health physician. At the end of this lecture, the audience should know the purpose and steps to carry out worksite inspection. Worksite inspection literally means carrying out an inspection of a workplace. In the context of occupational health practice, when a doctor visits a workplace, it should be a systematic process of evaluation of a workplace to identify, assess and manage the risk factors for the purpose of maintaining and promoting workers' health. Worksite inspection is usually carried out for the following purposes: to identify and evaluate the actual and potential health hazards under the normal and abnormal condition, to determine the effectiveness of control measures, to investigate complaints, near misses, accidents, or occupational diseases, to determine compliance with regulation, to assess fitness for work, or to provide opportunistic health education to the company. However, when a doctor visits a workplace in the context of managing an occupational health-related case, the purposes are usually one or more of the followings: to make the diagnosis of occupational disease, to find the cause of the illness, to suggest effective workplace control measures, to recommend fitness for work for the worker, to suggest job modification if any, to promote health and prevent others from getting the similar problems, or to give opportunistic health education. Before visiting a workplace, you must know your objectives clearly, so that you can make appropriate preparation, so as not waste precious time during the visit, and you will be able to achieve your aims at the end of the visit. Before the visit, you must contact relevant personnel, and obtain their permission to enter and visit the workplace. You should specify your objectives, and inform the management of the company of what you are intent to do during the visit. It is always good to prepare a checklist of what you plan to inspect, or carry out, during the visit. Remember to prepare the equipment beforehand, if you plan to carry out hygiene monitoring at the workplace. You might also want to examine the site plan, operation plan, or identify workers that you want to interview, before the visit, if such information is available to you. Besides these, sometimes you might need to obtain some epidemiological data, or do a literature review on the relevant diseases, or condition, so that you know what to look for during the visit. Usually, when you enter a workplace, you will be briefed by a person in charge. A well-managed workplace will usually have a safety briefing to all visitors before proceeding to a proper visit. After the briefing, you can carry out the visit according to a pre-arranged plan. During the walkthrough of the workplace, you can identify, assess, and characterize hazards in the workplace. You also need to take this opportunity to think about appropriate control methods to overcome these hazards. You might need to carry out recording, either by video or photo taking, and obtain relevant data for review and analysis later. Before carrying out any form of recording, you have to obtain permission from the owner of the premise. One of the practices that I find good is, during the visit, try to take opportunity to talk to the workers, and provide them with advice on how to protect and preserve their health at work. After the visit, you must always summarize your findings, and provide feedback to the management. Sometimes, you might need to come back and present officially your findings to the management. Your feedback must always come with some suggestions or recommendations based on your walkthrough survey findings. During this feedback session, the risk must be communicated clearly to the relevant stakeholders. You must document what you have presented to avoid future misunderstanding. If your worksite visit involves case diagnosis and management, please do not forget about notification, reporting to relevant agencies and continuous management of the patient. Risk communication is sometimes an art that one needs to master. It is an interactive process of information and opinion exchange on risks between the risk assessors, risk managers, and other interested parties. When you want to communicate risks to the employer, you should gear your speech towards the interests of the employer. For example, you can convince the manager by pointing out that improving the safety and health condition of the workplace will promote worker spirit, and hence increase the productivity, as well as the image of the company. On the other hand, when you communicate risk to the employee, you should convince them to protect themselves, by pointing out the importance of preserving their health, so that they can live a happy life, support their family, and be together with their loved ones. There are various methods of communicating risks to the audience. The methods can be both formal and informal. These includes lecture, seminar, meeting, video, brochure, poster, and many more. Regardless of what methods you are intent to use, the final aim is to convey the message and convince the audience to take actions against the risks. I am going to show you 3 video clips on real workplaces that I have visited before. While you are watching the video clip, think of the answers to the questions posted in the slides. I will provide you with the answers at the end of each video clip. Okay, let's start. In this video clips, you can identify 3 main types of hazards, namely physical hazard, chemical hazard, and ergonomic hazard. The most obvious physical hazard is noise. You can also see a lot of wall fans in this factory, and hence you can predict that the temperature in this factory is warm, or hot. In the actual work-through survey, you need to use your 5 senses to identify all the hazards. Stamping process can cause physical injury, if our body parts are stamped during the process. Hence, it is classified under physical hazard. All stamping machine will require some form of solvents, or grease for the movements, hence, chemical hazard is present in this factory as well. You can also see workers are standing during work, some of them repetitively performing the same motions, over and over again, and there are a lot of heavy parts, which will require carrying, pulling, pushing, loading, and unloading processes. These are all classified under ergonomic hazard. So, how do you control these hazards? You can follow the hierarchy of control principle. First, think about elimination. Is it possible to eliminate the hazards in this factory? Well, it can be done, but not practical. For example, you can remove the human, and use robots to load the metals, and hence eliminate the ergonomic hazard. But it is not practical because the cost can be more than the income for this business. Let's move on to substitution. Yes, you can try to substitute the chemical used in this factory with the less hazardous chemicals, if any. For this, you need to find out exactly what chemicals they use, the health effects of these chemicals, and do research, to find out whether there are any less hazardous alternatives to these chemicals or not. For physical hazards, you can suggest barrier, or damping system, for noise hazard, and improve ventilation system for temperature. Engineering control method is usually expensive, and requires technical person to design, and install the system. If engineering control method is not feasible or inadequate, we move on to administrative control. The company can implement job rotation, and employ a bit more staff to reduce exposure time for each staff. Besides, the company can carry out training on safe operating procedure, and usage of personal protective equipment. Lastly, the company must provide personal protective equipment to the staff at no cost. Let's see the next video clips. You can pause the video to read the history and questions. In this case, the patient was suffering from carpal tunnel syndrome. The aim for the workplace visit is to identify workplace hazard that can cause the disease, and to confirm occupational carpal tunnel syndrome. From the video, you can see that she had to repetitively grip her right hand with force, for at least 8,000 times per day, for the past 10 years. During each grip, a pressure was exerted over the palm, especially flexor retinaculum area, by the handle of the cutter. This repetitive force over carpal tunnel area caused the carpal tunnel syndrome. Hence, her carpal tunnel syndrome is likely to be caused by her occupation. Now, how do we manage this case? We need to recommend to the company to remove this worker from performing this task until she is fully recovered. After recovery, she can resume her work, but need to be placed to rotation to reduce the exposure. Apart from that, if you make a diagnosis of an occupational disease, you have to notify the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, under the provision of the Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994. Finally, you can help this worker to claim for Social Security compensation, because she is suffering from an occupational disease. Now, let's move on to the last video clip. Again, in this case, the purpose of the worksite visit is to confirm whether the asthma was due to workplace exposure to asthmagen or not. From the video, you can see that the worker is spraying paint in an enclosed space. Spray paint is a known asthmagen that can cause asthma. He did not wear proper personal protective equipment. By right, he should wear a chemical cartridge respirator, gloves, a long sleeve clothing, and an apron. Hence, it is likely that his asthmatic attacks, which were started 2 years after working in this factory, were caused by the exposure to spray paint. In this video, you can also identify noise and ergonomic hazard. In summary, workplace visit is very important for an occupational health doctor to confirm the diagnosis of an occupational disease. Workplace visit enables you to make risk assessment and provide appropriate recommendations to manage a patient holistically. When you manage an occupational health case, it is not restricted to the clinical management, but rather managing the work environment, so that the worker is protected from getting occupational diseases.